Welcome back, audience. I want to record another little video, and this video is going to be about some of the words that meant to me love and how did they actually correspond to the meaning. Those Greek words like Eros, Agape, Philia, and Logos, and what do they mean? There's lots of literature talking about it, but I just want to link it exactly to the meaning as close as possible with words. And anything beyond that, you would need to obviously have the direct experience of it. And I found out that the way they correspond to the consciousness and the reality itself is that we having the soul, which is our feelings, the mind, which is our thoughts, and the body, which is our sensations, and that's how we would identify ourselves. There's nothing outside of it, but also there's this background of everything, which is stillness, right? Void, you can call it void, universal. And sometimes those levels are called causal, astral, physical as well. Doesn't matter what kind of names you're going to put it, there are these three bubbles of reality, and each one has its own drive, and then there's one overlapping one which has a universal drive. So starting with agape is that universal love. It's a type of compassion, and one way you could describe it is this feeling the fabric of everything that you're experiencing, the background fabric of everything that you're experiencing, and that's that still background. And there's a certain type of peace and stillness. It is an appreciation for everything, right? Appreciation for everything, meaning on an individual level you may like it or dislike it, but on the universal level there's this silent and still appreciation of being. Okay, that's compassion, and that's called agape. And it's not personal. It's universal. Yet it is important to have good personal relationships, because that love, agape, is what alchemizes everything. All those negative feelings through the agape, or incoherent feelings, are being alchemized, and that leads to coherent patterns and feelings, and on a personal level, and so which that leads to this causal or soul reality, which is a you would describe this as experiencing coherent feeling, experiencing or sharing coherent feeling. I don't want to go into this phenomena of that every experience of the feeling is actually shared, because it's a little bit out of scope of this video, but let's just say shared and coherent experience of a feeling is this called philia. I know the word philia may not have a good rap because of the pedophilia, but and it's not correct actually. It's supposed to be called Eros, not philia, because philia is completely different. I'm not sure why it's actually been labeled like that, but anyway. So any kind of shared coherent feeling or experience of the coherent feeling is philia. It's this type of love. It's a personal soul love. And then you have the mind, the astral, the mental, which is logos. And funny enough, I mean, logos is that type of love too. That leads to sort of like a sense of clarity, right? There's something that is confusion to clarity, and that's the drive of logos. And the coherent thought is the satisfaction of logos. Coherent feeling is satisfaction of the philia. And now going into the body and sensations, coherent sensations, which would be like deeply enjoyable sensation, that would be a coherent sensation, and that's Eros. And everything in a physical or sensory world is about sensing it as as deeply enjoyable as possible. But any kind of sense could be deeply enjoyed. Okay. So as you can see, we have those three bubbles, and each one has its own drive, and the name of that drive is Eros, Logos, Philia, and the universal drive is Agape. And that's the real meaning of those little Greek words. Philia is basically sharing an essence or feeling. Eros is sharing a sensation, and Logos is sharing a thought or a pattern. And so you could see how it may work in your everyday life, and why sometimes you can overlap with some people on some levels, but not not all of them. So there's the sharing, and this is why, like, you may have people who are you are not really incoherent, because they're like a very incoherent, let's say, on the feeling level, and you don't really want to bring that into your. And so the agape love, or that compassion, is your type of protection from it, right? Because that incoherence is not entering you, because you prefer to share coherence over the incoherence. So compassion and agape is for everybody, whether you like a person or not, right? And this is what, like Jesus said, love your enemies. It didn't really actually mean to have any other types of personal love for your enemies, because that's ridiculous, because then you then you're a stupid fool. That's like redundant to say stupid fool. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is love your enemies. It meant this agape compassion. Why? Because that makes you into a better and more functional person who may fight against uh, incorrect structures and the fear inducing structures. You see? But it doesn't mean that, you see what I'm trying to say? It doesn't mean that you can't, like, philia would be like empathy, because you basically sharing the feeling, right? And so you may not want to share the incoherent feeling. Why would you want to do that? And if anything that enters you in a coherent manner, you can alchemize it back to this agape compassion, and that thing does no longer throws you off. You can still be coherent and function on all these other levels and do what is right without feeling either hate or fear inside of you, and yet taking the right action, right? And so this is why also explains why sometimes you connect over, just there's a physical, sorry about that, there might be like a physical overlap, physical attraction, just Eros love. Sometimes it might be like philia, and then logos, and so all the connections that you have with the other people are basically based on those three worlds. And I think, like, we're all looking for like something that would be a complete overlap of everything, right? But that would obviously bring the biggest challenges, because you can only overlap on all the levels if you are coherent on all the levels yourself. Um, so but it also explains why sometimes you have people in your life and it's a type of connection, and you say, well, you can share a thought with this type of person, and it's type of logos relationship. We say, oh, you can share a feeling with this type of, it's Philia relationship, and you can share sensation with this person, and that's Eros relationship. Okay. And then there's also depth to it. There is the depth to Eros, there's a depth to Philia, and there's a depth to logos, right? This is why you can be connected with somebody on more like a superficial level. Maybe superficial is not a good word, but like light, and then somebody else at way more deep, right? And in the previous video I talked about these flower of life, the seed of life, the germ of life, the flower of life, and the fruit of life, and explaining all these desires that are really can be seen as petals, and these triangles as gems, and each one of them is actually represents the fruit of life, represents the Eros, the flower of life represents the logos, the gem of life represents the Philia, and then the seed of life represents the Agape. At least that's the way I see right now. And so when you overlap over these few gems with somebody, so there's a connection over, this, let's say, fruit of life, and you have like an Eros attraction to somebody, and so there's this overlap of the desire of the sum of those gems over there, and the more of those gems overlap, the stronger is the Eros love. And same thing with the logos and the flower of life, and the more of these overlap, the more clarity and beauty you experiencing. And then the germ of life as well, the more of these feelings you share, the more of those are being kind of highlighted. And then the seed of life, of course, that's like when you share the being, sharing the being. And then you may say, well, sharing the being, so there's your soul, and then there's somebody else, right? And then you say, okay, so then I have a certain type of capacity for certain types of feelings, certain sensations, and certain thought patterns. And if somebody else, another soul, is also corresponding with this, there's a resonance, and then there is a connection. There's a connection there. Okay, now I want to separate something here, because the word attraction that we use, you see, the words are quite tricky, but sometimes we use the word attraction, but there is a difference. I have to say there's a difference. Sometimes you may want, okay, let's just be real of what's really happening in life, for real. Sometimes you may feel an attraction to somebody else on a, let's say, physical level, Eros level, even though there's a discrepancy on a heart level. And so why would that happen? Why would you actually be attracted to somebody who is, for example, incoherent in their heart, and you want coherence, and they don't want that? Basically, what I'm trying to say here is that somebody who may come across abusive, and yet you still have the attraction on a physical level, right? What the hell is going on there? it is different when you have a resonance. This is the reason you are attracted to this type of thing, and it's usually Eros that drives you to these types of attractions, to these types of connections, is so you could see those gems that you have not alchemized yet. And again, every gem corresponds to the petal or a triangle, which is either the masculine boundary, right, that you need to learn, or the feminine um, um, love or wisdom. Basically, there's each petal is a type of wisdom, and each triangle is a type of love. So it's either one or the other that you still haven't, discovered within yourself, and this is why that attraction is there. But that is more of catalyzing the alchemy. But once you discover those, then it's more about resonating with one another. If somebody else has discovered that within themselves and you discover it within yourself, then there is certain type of resonance. Okay? And so there's a connection there. And why there's a connection? Because you share something that is identical or very close in one another. And perhaps it's, as an example, you connect over a certain type of gem, and you have the masculine part of it, and they have the feminine part of it, and so that really connects you. There's a resonance there. Or perhaps you do share that gem, and you choose to play a masculine role on that gem, and they play the feminine, or vice versa, right? So anyway, I'm just trying to communicate what's really going on metaphysical level, to simplify things. And so, yeah, that's what this is, like a little map of love, as I call it. Wow, 17 minutes. Longer than I thought. That's what she said. Okay, it's enough. I'll see you next time.